After hearing it a third time, a shock of adrenaline coursed through my entire body. This time I could actually hear it. A wet, bubbling grotesquerie of a human voice. Something in between a man or a woman. I couldn't tell. My name is Travis. I am uploading this here because oddly, this is the only thing on my phone that seems to be working as of right now. I am currently curled up under a stack of tree bark in a ditch. It's so cold here. None of this makes any sense. I'm going to start from the very beginning in hopes someone can retrace my steps and find me. If I can even be found. I'm not so sure I even exist anymore. I set out with all the essentials for camping. Tent, food, and whatever. I'm not gonna list them all. It's not important anyway. I got into my car and drove up here. I'm an experienced camper. I've done multiple dispersed camping trips on my own. I didn't do anything crazy either. I simply parked my car over at the beginning of the trailhead and went on a hike till I decided it would be a good spot to set up camp. I'd tell you all the location, but for some reason, I can't seem to remember where the hell I decided to go. All I know is, I'm somewhere up in the mountains in the east of America. The harder I try to think about it, my head hurts. It throbs like a nail was driven straight into the side of my temple. I'm not even sure that's right information. I don't even think this post is going to make it up. I sent a test before and saw it upload, but there's nothing I can tag or anyone I can message. I hope the mods didn't remove it. I need help. All of this started just because I wanted to go on a fucking camping trip. One thought festers in my head over and over, like a sick, corrupted rot driving me to what feels like insanity. All you did was walk a mile down the trail, and that's all I fucking did. I parked my car at the beginning of the trailhead and walked in. I think. I walked a mile down the trail, stretched my legs and set up camp. I threw my pack on the ground, dragged out my tent and had it set up in minutes. I gathered some rocks and made a makeshift fire pit. I took out some hamburger meat and cooked it on a rock over the fire. Once my stomach was full, I crawled into my tent to sleep. Quickly drifting off to sleep and getting an amazing night of much needed rest, I awoke to the sound of my wristwatch alarm. 6:30 a.m. illuminated into my eyes. Wiping away the dredges of sleep, the first thing I noticed was how dark it was outside. The sun should have been up by then. It's the middle of summer, not to mention how cold it was. It felt easily 20 degrees. Not thinking much of it, considering I'm up in the mountains, I decided I'd bundle up in a heavier jacket and pants I brought in anticipation of this happening. The cold, not whatever the fuck this is. Rolling up my sleeping bag and stuffing it into my pack, I unzipped my tent. Crawling outside, I rose to my feet. With my hands on my hips, looking around, I let out a deep sigh. It's dark. Dark. It's almost 7 in the morning by this time, and there's still no sun. Nothing. Not even a slight light in the sky from the sun peeking itself over the mountain. It looked like midnight. I couldn't see the moon or stars either. So, I took in the cold, dark atmosphere. I checked my phone to see if I had any signal. Sure enough, nope. I'm in the mountains, of course. Sliding my phone into my pocket, I scratched my head, a little irritated, thinking what the hell I would do. Ignoring the growing anxiety in my gut, I looked down at the embers smoldering from the night before. I decided I would get the fire going once again. I figured I could plan my course of attack after I got warmed up. Sitting at the fire, it was now supposed to be almost noon. I held my head in my hands. At first, I told myself maybe my watch woke me up too early. Maybe my phone is broken and has the wrong time too. I didn't know. My brain was reaching for any possible mundane explanation at this point. I waited until the logs burned to ash and the light began to fade. Finally, I decided I better start moving back to the car. So much for a plan of attack. All I could think about was how uncomfortable all this was. Something wasn't right about this, and I needed to see how everyone else was reacting. I figured I could get some service on my phone if I got out of the forest. As I walked, I spotted the little yellow ribbon marked on a tree to let the other hikers know this is where the trail is. Good, I said to myself with a spark of hope bubbling up in my stomach. Looking left and right, trying to remember which way I had gallivanted into this place, I kinda took a guess and followed the trail. Which probably isn't the smartest move. But I'm so nervous at this point, I just want to move. After about an hour of walking, I kicked up a branch in front of me. It stuck straight into the ground, reaching straight into the air like a man begging for someone to pull him from an impossibly large cliff. I let out a small celebratory scoff to myself and kept on walking. After about 5 minutes, another branch began to show itself in the darkness. It eerily stuck out of the ground in the same way as the one I had kicked earlier. I looked up and inspected my surroundings. Sure enough, there were broken branches on the tree above. As I kept on my journey, I listened to the sounds of crickets and frogs. A susurrous cacophony of nocturne sounds. Frogs bellowed and crickets chirped. I felt the frigid breeze kiss my face, turning my nose red from the cold. Wait a minute, I said to myself. No. As I closed the distance between me and this otherwise ordinary branch in front of me, I bent over and examined it closer. Another stick poking out of the ground. Moss on the right side, bare on the left. Okay, I said, studying the stick. You know what? I said as I took out my knife and sawed the tip of it off. Taking the head of the stick, I stuck it into the ground to the right of it. I'm being paranoid. The words escaped my lips in a ragged, airy tremor. I got up from the ground and brushed the dirt off my hands. Alright, let's get the fuck out of here, I said to myself, pushing on. As I listened to the sounds of the forest, I clocked something off with the frog's familiar calls. I stopped dead in my tracks and listened. It took me a minute or two to finally put my finger on what exactly was wrong. It felt like something, a small itch in the back of my brain. When I finally spotted it, it hit me like a ton of bricks. They all sounded the exact same. Sure, frogs make the same noise over and over at night, but the frogs sounded like a looping sound. The crickets did too once I finally paid close enough attention. The wind blew every 2 minutes for the same period of time. What the hell is going on? My heart sank. Panic began to brew in my chest. Depersonalization began to set in. A faint veil began to cover my mind in an effort to shield my now weakening psyche. No way. No, I said to myself, running to the stick. Moss on the right, bare on the left. Tip sawed off and stuck into the ground. No! I screamed in anger and fear. That's not right! No! I yelled as if arguing with some higher being. I got up and sprinted straight ahead, following the trail. 3 minutes of running later, the same branch came into view. I ran by it. Once, twice, 3 times. I finally fell to my knees in front of the stick. What is happening? I said to myself, tears welling in my eyes. I've been going in circles this whole time. No, there's no way. I ran in a straight line for 10 minutes. I walked for a fucking hour and a half, pounding the ground like an angry toddler. Ah, fuck! I said, getting back up on my feet. Defeated and otherwise confused, I made my way back to where I had set up camp the day before, and it didn't take very long for obvious reasons. I didn't go fucking anywhere. I found the same clearing I had set my tent up. What was uncanny was the fact the fire pit I had made was no longer there. The rocks had laid back in the same area they were before I had moved them, and there definitely weren't any remnants of a fire either. Why? I said, exhausted with the ever-growing oddities. Throwing my hands out from my sides, I began picking up the rocks once again. After placing them warily in the same place as before, I once again made another fire. Back to square one, I said to myself with a long, deep breath. I checked the time. It was now 11 p.m. It's been an entire day already. At this point, the gravity of my situation hasn't even begun to set on me. I knew 3 things. It's dark, I was absolutely stuck, and nothing is working how it's supposed to. I laid back onto the cold forest floor and stared up into the sky, plopping my arms out and letting a deep sigh escape. I flopped my hands over my eyes and let out a deep groan of frustration. Hello? I shot up from the ground and craned my head in the direction the voice came from. Was someone calling out to me? My heart raced, scared and finally hopeful. Hello? Hey, I yelled back with desperation. Hello? After hearing it a 3rd time, a shock of adrenaline coursed through my entire body. This time I could actually hear it. A wet, bubbling grotesquerie of a human voice. Something in between a man or a woman. I couldn't tell. Almost like a man trying to make their voice sound deeper than it actually was, with a feminine tone to it. It didn't sound right. Nothing about this was right. Why the fuck did I yell back? I scrambled on the forest floor, darting behind a tree. I sat there breathing hard, waiting for something. Anything. I heard branches in the distance crack. Underbrush disturbed as something dragged itself desperately towards my camp. Hello? The voice said a little quieter. It was just outside the light of my camp. In between the scrapes on the ground and this thing's breathing, I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. My heartbeat quickened as I listened to how this thing existed. The breathing sounded like someone gasping for air, as though their lungs were filled with some sort of thick, viscous, stagnant fluid, desperately trying to get any form of air into their lungs. A faint gurgling could be heard. I could hear its bones scraping together, and tight snaps as if moving alone hurt this thing. I could hear 2 loud thumps like it was searching for anything to gain leverage on. It grabbed onto the hard soil, squeezing as hard as it could to pull itself over the ground. Branches and rocks snapped and turned to dust from the sheer force of this thing's grip. I was surprised how fast it managed to get over to me. It sounded like it was at least a mile away. I didn't even think my yell would be heard. I held my breath, hoping whatever the hell this was would come to pass. I grasped my chest, trying to steady my breathing. I had no idea what this thing was. What I did know was that I did not want to give myself away. My toes curled into the ground, ready to bolt away as fast as I could from this. Every cell in my body told me to get the hell out of there. I wanted to run, but I knew somewhere deep down that was not the correct choice here. Hello? It said with a sad tone, as if disappointed it couldn't find anything. I listened as its labored breathing began to slowly fade. I heard it leave after what felt like hours. I waited until I couldn't hear anything. I didn't want to see whatever was making those noises. When I was as sure as I could be that I was safe, I waited even longer. I sat there till my ass went numb. I slowly walked in the opposite direction of that vile abhorrence. I found a ditch a little bigger than me, deep enough to provide some sort of shelter. I didn't want to stay in my tent. That would yield very little protection from anything. I turned my light on, holding my hand over it to make sure I didn't illuminate too much of the surrounding area. I only used it when I needed it, and began to unpack my tent. Laying it flat, I staked it into the ground covering the ditch. I found some tree bark large enough to lay over it. I figured that would keep me camouflaged from whatever the hell was stalking me. Now I could at least feel somewhat safe here. I crawled into my makeshift home. I laid there, contemplating what I should even do next. It's dark, and finding a way out of here proved useless. Finally having some time to relax and gather my thoughts, I remembered I had brought my PLB with me. Why the hell didn't I use this thing earlier? Think of this as a life alert button for hikers. It sends a ping to a satellite notifying the proper individuals that help is needed. So I took it out of my pack. I quickly fumbled with it in my hands, pressing the correct button. But nothing. Nothing happened. No beep. No audible sound indicating the ping was sent out. Nothing. So I chucked the useless device to the other side of the ditch. I stared into the dark corner of my makeshift shelter, feeling all hope was lost. I decided to do the only thing that could muster up any sense of control in this nightmare, and that was to think. I could map this place out, figure out where the hell I am. I mean, I should be in the same place I came to, right? I'd have to be quiet. I checked my phone battery, still good, 87%, so that's good. I shut it off to conserve power. My flashlight is working fine. I put new batteries in it before I left for this trip, so no worries there. I have a knife for protection, and warm clothes, so that's a plus. Laying my body back against the ditch, I let out a small chuckle. At least I came prepared. So if someone does see this post, I have enough food to at least last me a week. Surely that would be enough time for whoever is reading this to find me. So, first things first, I'll explore surrounding area and take a look at what the hell we got here. If this post makes it up, I will add an update as soon as I can. Please wish me luck. Hello everyone, CreepypastaTime here. Thanks for listening to tonight's story. If you enjoyed tonight's story, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. Also, link to my Spotify and subreddit in the description. I'll see you in the next one.